And I've started compiling. I'm sure a document already exists, but I wanted to make one anyways. Compiling a list
We're live on Facebook.
of all
What?
the different kings.
We're live on Facebook. It said.
Oh, nice. Compiling a list of all the different kings and how long they reigned, when they started reigning. Found some pretty funny things, like we don't know how old Saul was when he became king, and we don't know how old Solomon was when he became king.
This is nice. The Facebook
But
live stream
I
looks
believe
good.
they reigned. I know Solomon, I think, and David reigned for 40 years, I believe.
Yeah, they reigned
There's
for 40 years.
reigned for 40 years.
It's mostly just interesting to be looking through and to see, because trying to find, like, and put it all down. People said that Solomon could have been as young as 12 or as old as 30 when he began to reign. And they based that on a few possible things. One person was talking about the idea how in Jewish culture you're considered a man at the age of 13 or whatever. And he talks about, when he says, I'm but a child, I don't know how to go out or to come in, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
That describes most of the teenagers I know.
Yeah, well, that's what they were saying, is that could also just describe him in his 20s as well, like, being like, I don't know how this job is really done. There's nothing that says he had to have been, like, 12 or 13 or something like that, but some people have speculated based on that statement that maybe he was still considered a child when he was about to take the reign. Or that maybe it was just an expression and he was like, I am like a child.
Yeah.
I have no idea how this job is done.
Well, see, I think
Hair looks really good this morning.
I think
Does it?
that
What's
one
it
of
doing?
the
Crazy.
Everything.
The back of it especially.
I think
Nice.
one of the rationales that the Congress people use to be in these positions for 30 and 40 years, 50 years, is they think they're a king or a queen. And these,
Give them an inch and they think they're a ruler. Sorry.
yeah, really. I'm just saying they get in these positions, and I don't know how. I don't know how people that live in these areas in these states allow some of these people in their rhetoric and in their thinking. I mean, obviously, they can't be following them and what they've progressed to over the course of 20, 30, 40 years, or they would never be reelected. They would never keep reelecting these people. There's got to be something going on with some of these folks that get reelected because their name is Clinton or their name is Kennedy or whatever it might be.
Well, it's the same concept, I think, to all the royal bloodlines and stuff, that kind of idea, just like,
Yeah,
the
but I'm just
people
saying,
who are
why would
thinking-
people in a certain state keep re-electing somebody that comes up with some of these preposterous ideas?
Fluoride.
Fluoride in the water.
Fluoride.
Yeah.
Fluoride is a heavy metal and it creates a passive mindset. It's used in most of the psychotic medications, psychiatric medications. It's a mood altering drug.
Right.
Hitler started doing it, fluoridating the water in Germany. It makes people passive. And then you add to that television, which puts people in an alpha state most of the time. We
Right.
have a generation that's not reacting on reason. They're only emoting. It's all about emotion, how they feel about it.
Yeah, but I mean, I watch television sometimes, and I can reason from cause to effect, and I see how preposterous some of these things are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just not getting enough fluoride, right? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, and what's even funnier is you find the people who are all talking about this stuff, they're looked at as crazy conspiratorial, oh, you're just
That's
like a
what you
whack
got
job.
to do,
Like,
yeah.
okay,
That's right, label me
just
however
keep
you
drinking the
want.
water.
Just keep drinking that Kool-Aid, people. It's just us on here right now anyway, so nobody else is. Oh yeah, Dan and Susan just got on.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
And also Susan said they have a little study group going at their place now.
Well,
Great.
They're not
Nice.
streaming it or anything, but they're just enjoying studying the Bible with 2 other people that are coming to their house. I think that's awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
And Mary Ruth is doing, I think, some online Bible studies on Zoom. I think they're on Friday evenings. And I think she's doing another one on Sabbath afternoons.
Nice.
So that's kind of neat.
It is pretty cool.
Looks like Mary Ruth just joined us. I see Susan.
Yeah, so what do you think you discovered with the tracking the king's reigns and that kind of thing?
Well, mostly what I want to look at is to see if anything about the numbers or their names kind of tell an interesting history. You know, like the fact that from the very start you have 2 names that are so similar from the beginning of the division, like Jeroboam and Rehoboam.
Mm.
You know, just on the first basis of looking at that, Rehoboam's name meant a people enlarged, and Jeroboam's name meant the people will contend.
Which
And
is
so, I
almost
mean-
like people dividing or fighting.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the prophecy was given both to Solomon and to Jeroboam as well, and God, you know, gave Jeroboam a pretty awesome opportunity and said, hey, if you do the right stuff and if you know, lead my people in righteousness, like, we'll establish your house and we'll, you know, make you great. And instead, he went the opposite direction, and it was very interesting because the first thing he did to keep people from going back to Rehoboam was he established false worship. Worshipping calves, and established a false holiday. And he took the feast of Sukkot and made it a day of worship for them, to the 2 calves that he made.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, that's such an interesting thing that, like,
Where registration service called 2 Cows came from.
2 calves. But I mean, it's interesting that that is the repeat incidents that always seems to happen back and forth. They keep going back to worshiping these cows. I guess it's because they came out of Egypt, but it's still very, like, it's just interesting that that happened, that Jeroboam has this encounter with the
Almost
prophet.
all the pagans had a worship system that worshipped cows or bulls or
I don't know why.
used them as.
They're delicious, but they're not that great. Yeah, I guess they were a much more integral part of society at that point. Be like men worshiping their cars now, I suppose.
But the thing is, they although their deities looked like those things, it didn't stop them from
Taking them.
raising cattle and eating cattle and that kind of thing. It just basically they worshipped a god whose
A
form.
symbol.
Except when you got to India, and they took it to
And
the
then in
extreme.
India, they wouldn't let you kill the cattle, even though the people were starving to death.
They're sitting there bathing in its urine. No wonder your nation is doing so great.
I am Mujibah.
Well, I mean, it's
I am
interesting just
Mujibah.
to see the development of how people think and how they end up coming to certain conclusions regarding supposed spiritual things, you know.
Yeah, and I was trying to find a good place to start from today as well, because the next few chapters, for lack of a better term, are kind of dry, in my opinion. They're just like, it's mostly just talking about more of the same kind of lineages, going through some different people.
So it's more of a chronicle than things that were actually happening. Right. And of course, the kings before or after the judges?
They're after.
After the judges, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because it came down to Samuel, and that's when he wanted a king.
Hey, Debbie just joined us.
yeah. Yeah. So is it? We got a minute or two. Or is it time to start up?
No, we have a minute.
A minute. Yeah. Yeah, I guess when you follow the progression of thinking through the Jewish dispensation, the Jewish probationary time. It's, of course, we don't have a very clear picture of the Adamic because, you know, Noah's everything's centered around the flood story, pretty much. And of course, the idea that you would have, the guy would have to go to something that extreme, that they must have been really off the rail in their thinking and in their activities, for God to step in and say, man, this just is so out of control, I gotta step in and do something.
It's almost 12 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock
It is
actually.
12 o'clock.
Yeah, okay.
So should
All
we
right.
start recording?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. We are recording.
Okay, everyone. Well, good to see our usual folks around the table, and good to see you guys joining us out there in cyberspace, joining us online. Hope you had a wonderful week. We certainly did down here. The weather was pretty cooperative and dry for a change, so we were able to get.
Richard changed
yeah.
it, but we didn't get any.
Yeah, glad to have you along, and I'm sure you're seeking the blessing that all of us are seeking and receiving today. And so before we start, let's go ahead and bow our heads for a word of prayer. Father, we do want to thank you and praise you for who you are. You do everything that you're supposed to do perfectly. And for that, we're certainly grateful, because that's so out of the norm of our lives and our circumstances. And you also have a heart of love and forgiveness that sometimes eludes us in our daily activities. So we do pray, Lord, and thank you for the consistency of who you are. And that means that we can have real faith in who you are and what you have accomplished and what you're continuing to do. So thank you for being there always for us and doing the things that we cannot do for ourselves. And even sometimes the things that we can. We are thankful that we have the opportunity today to open your book and glean again insights and gems of truth and understanding. These will be important for us as we move forward through time and through history, as we approach a time where you decide once again to end probationary time. And we know that before we get to that place, that we will become like the days of Noah. And it's going to be very, very interesting, more than interesting, in fact. And we know that only by your providence will we be able to survive. And so we're thankful, Lord, that you will carry a people through to the very end. And you will do so to bring glory and honor to your name. And so we hope and pray today that we'll do the same, and that you'll guide and direct us through your Spirit. Bless all those who are joining us online, those who are tuning in either now or afterwards. The blessing is intended, of course, for all of us to receive, and we pray that you'll accomplish that as only you can do. And we ask all of these mercies in your wonderful name. Amen and amen. Okay.
Very good. Well, last week we had left off talking about the.
Did you want to start right off on that, or you want
Oh, I mean, it's up to you.
to say something?
You were silent. I assumed that meant.
Yeah, I just, you
One of
know,
those Sabbaths you had nothing to say.
well,
We've been talking a lot this morning.
you know, this the weaponizing of the common cold, that probably isn't really so common, because apparently it was engineered.
It says it's a novel coronavirus.
Novel. I'm sure it was engineered.
A novel. It was a fake book.
What the documentation shows, anyway, is that it was engineered up in Fort Detrick, Maryland, between the years of 2008 and 2013. And it was taken up to
Kind of went through this last week too.
a lab in Canada, and then eventually got to China. But anyway, the long and short of it is,
I'll
There-
shortcut the process.
very good. There's so much, as I was saying to Elijah earlier, I think there's so many unintended consequences that the folks that are promoting this You know, and I think we all know why it's being so heavily promoted and kept around, kept alive, so that we get past November, past the election. I mean, just think of if just think of the scenario of Donald Trump having to debate, Joe Biden. There would be
Oh,
no.
Lord.
It would be a disaster.
I'd pay to see it.
Yeah, it'd be a disaster in a sense because of Joe's had 40 plus, 45 plus, 50 years
Come
or
on,
so.
man.
50 years of supposedly public service where he's accomplished nothing to very little.
It has to all be on purpose.
Well, I'm just saying that if you're promoting the Democratic ticket, you got to think, how do we keep these guys apart? How do we keep them from having debates? How do we, because that would be disastrous.
We just saw that thing yesterday about Washington State. Their state of emergency, their medical
Last till
ends until November
ends.
5th, the day after the election.
Yeah, and why would it end then? Why would they decide to put that date on when there's supposed to be a second wave coming and all the yada yada? I mean, every year we know we have a virus season, right? A flu season.
Flu season.
So November is kind of in the heart of that, and
It's pretty much October to March.
yes. So I think the big factor, one of the big factors, is how to keep them apart without any debates, because it'd be all over for Joe if he even could get through
It's
it.
already all over. I mean, like, I don't see nearly so many people supporting him. And in fact, everyone keeps, a lot of the people, the Democratic people that I see on Facebook are saying, like, they wouldn't vote for him because they see that he's not capable.
I
You know,
think
they're like, we don't
there's a
wanna vote for
possibility
Trump, but
he's
we
a
don't want-
placeholder.
Yeah.
That they're going to sneak somebody in.
Right,
He's going to bow out
exactly.
close to the end of close to the election because of his medical issues.
Someone more charismatic
And
will
they'll
swoop
bring,
in.
the Democratic National
Last
Convention
minute.
will decide they're going to bring somebody in who won't even
Last
have to
minute.
spend money in campaign.
Yeah.
Right, and somebody who wouldn't have to go through the debate process because of the virus and all these other things, So yeah, there's no question there's some shadiness
What a crock.
that's going to be brought into the equation, and I don't know. As I thought about it this week, I thought who in their right mind would really want to move our country in a direction of a one world system. I mean, definitely the United Nations is pushing that. You can go online now. They're not even suppressing it anymore. They're just coming right out and saying, listen, this agenda is in full operational mode, and we're taking it to the next level, and et cetera, et cetera. There will be by 2030, a new world order, and we're gonna go ahead and make it happen because it's in the best interest of it's on the best interest of everybody else in the world who has not what we have in this country.
Remember who said he's only a false front, Biden.
Yeah. So we'll see how they want to play it, but obviously keeping the COVID thing going is part of the process because it keeps people separated, it keeps people apart, makes us afraid of one another, supposedly. And then it's creating also a kind of a civil war in a sense between the mask wearers and the non-mask wearers. And it's not that people that don't want to wear a mask, it's not that they want to infect anybody, okay? People that don't wear masks should be the healthy people to start with anyway. Only if you're sick, if you're sneezing, coughing, doing that kind of thing, would a mask even be appropriate at certain times. But the healthy people basically think that the whole thing is a crock, and they've weaponized the common cold inappropriately, and they're using it to get rid of Trump and the Republicans and take control of everything once again.
Well, I think anybody who knows anything about the immune system knows that it's just a.
And it's detrimental. I mean, to hook up an oximeter, to yourself and put a mask on, your oxygen is going to start to go down almost immediately. So you're breathing in exhaled air, and of course you're trapping contaminants right there at your face. So not only are you making yourself more vulnerable to anything and everything that comes along, whether it's a flu virus or not. But it's depleting your system of oxygen, which is going to make you a little more docile, and you need oxygen to think clearly. And obviously, that's one of the goals of these folks, these globalists. They don't want people thinking clearly, so hype them up on fluoride in the water, make them wear a mask so that they don't get the oxygen they need. I mean, so there's all kinds of things going on here, I think, that are not really being talked about. And certainly the media is pushing this whole left agenda, and they're brainwashing people. You just keep telling a lie long enough and loud enough, and it all of a sudden becomes the truth in many people's minds. And just because you keep saying it doesn't make it so, and that's why Trump very appropriately calls most of those organizations fake news. We'd be better off just turning them off, of course. Anyway, we still have a mission to accomplish. We still have the events predicted in Scripture are still going to play out, COVID virus or not. But I think we're seeing an attitude that is developing that really falls in line, in sync with the attitude that Scripture says will be revealed at the end, where you have people turning on one another. Okay, and it may even be that the people that you felt closest to, even in your own churches, may be the very ones that turn against you as well. So we'll have to see. I mean, we'll see. It won't be terribly long before we'll start to see some of these things play out very quickly, we believe. So I can just say, hold on to your hat, pull up your bootstraps, and hang on, because it's definitely going to be a wild ride as we move on, and certainly as we get closer to November, there's this anticipation of a lot of unrest, a lot of manufactured unrest that really shouldn't be there. To try to make things as unstable as possible. Even boycotting. We heard about the boycott one of these big companies because what's it? Voya? Is it Voya? Goya Foods, $1 billion industry company, because the owner, the founder of the company, had some good things.
Public statement to praise the president.
Had some good things to say about Trump and his policies and the way things were, he had taken the economy. So yeah, I mean, everybody has a right to do what they want to do, of course. If you don't want to buy Goya products, then you're totally, it's up to you. But to organize a systematic process to take a company down just because the founder or the owner has an opinion about something, he's certainly entitled to his opinion, right? He's entitled to support whoever he wants to support. But just because he does that doesn't mean that you have the right to destroy a business that employs tens of thousands of people, you see. And in fact, some of those people that are employed may be the very ones that support that leftist agenda. And this is what I talked about when I talked about those unintended consequences.
Mary Ruth said, I read in Micah 7 this morning, how our family will be our worst enemy, our betrayers in the last days.
Right. Well, of course, you get into the Gospels, Jesus picks up on that very same point and talks about the fact that, you'll have brother against brother and mother against father, and, the family members, there'll be contention, of course, in this.
I can already see it happening.
I was gonna say, I think it's already happening right now without even having the actual end time be in full force. Like, families are already splitting apart like crazy as it is.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons for that, and maybe the big reason for that, actually, is academia. Obviously kids grow up with a certain ideology from their parents, and then they go off to school and they start getting bombarded with other perspectives, which is fine, because I think people need to understand that there's a variety of things out there for them to consider. But then they go off to college, and they start to get programmed. And I think that's one of the fallacies and down things of academia. They program people so that
yeah, I mean, the fact that they teach they teach science with with theory, and they teach it as fact.
Exactly, right. So, there's a
They
lot of
obviously have a huge bias towards it.
there's a lot of falsehoods that's taught in colleges, of course, and a lot of ideology. And again, people are entitled to their own opinion, but should the state allow you to have 40, 50 people in your presence, for years perhaps of time, and just constantly programming them with your idea? I mean, I think what's happened is schools are designed to take the place of the parents. The state has set things up so that they can kind of move the parents aside and actually program the children the way they want them to think.
You're a product of the state.
And then you become a product of the state, right? Anyway, enough ranting from me. Just letting you know that we've got a mission to accomplish, but there's going to be difficulties ahead, and we're just starting to see those unfold. And so we'll see how it plays out. So.
Mary Ruth said, I kept thinking how it will be hard for some to stand firm. When all their loved ones are against them. I know women who have stopped studying God's truth because their husband didn't like what she was learning. And it's sad to choose a husband or a friend over God's truth.
Yeah.
But I've been talking to various people this week, just this whole mask issue. My daughter was saying that her son's uncle considers them to be nut jobs because they're not sheltering in the house and they're not wearing masks and all that stuff. And here's somebody that they've been close to and good friends with, who have literally been staying in their homes since March.
Wow.
Not going anywhere.
Right.
And think that they're wild conspiracy theorists because they believe that this whole thing is a fake.
Well, you brought out something a couple of weeks ago we need to repeat here, and that was that there was a study that I guess it was done at a hospital or university or somebody did, where they tried to infect people with the virus. They took people that had the virus, and they tried to actually take people that didn't have it, and they tried to infect them. And nobody has a mask on. They tried.
They tried them sitting distance apart and closer until
right.
they were actually breathing into each other's mouths,
breathing in each other's faces,
and nobody got sick.
Right. So
people who were infected with people who weren't.
Right. There was no. So there was a big question mark then as to actually how this thing spreads and transmits. Does it do? And of course we've all bought into the idea that sneezing and coughing and whatnot is what transmits the disease. And this particular test that was done, it'd be interesting if we could find that and put it up online.
Well, the only issue with stuff like that would be that people will say it's too small of a study, and not only that, but also maybe those people had false positives or whatever. So I mean, stuff like that can unfortunately be discredited.
There's none so blind as he who will not see.
Right, but at any rate, and then there's the issue of whether what they're pushing now are these cloth masks. The general public is being recommended to wear a cloth mask so that the PPE can be used at the hospitals by doctors.
They've been pushing that for a while because they were saying the hospitals were having a shortage of surgical masks and stuff.
Right.
Well, it's interesting that yesterday Fauci was interviewed, and after he'd done 2 interviews in the past where he said masks were ineffective and not needed,
unnecessary by healthy
unnecessary.
people. For healthy
now
people.
He's saying they need to be forced, but Trump came out publicly yesterday and said he will not do a national mandate on masks.
Right. Well, there's still a big question mark as to whether or not the mask is even effective in stopping if things are transmitted by droplets or air droplets or whatever, or by somebody breathing on somebody else. If that's the way it is truly transmitted, and we're not certain that that's the case, the mask is also ineffective in preventing that. And so,
actually will cause more problems because you're constantly rebreathing your own carbon dioxide and your own bacteria with a mask on. Therefore, you're causing less oxygen to yourself and more likelihood that
they don't think it's
sick.
going to stop you from getting sick. They don't think it's going to do that. They just say it's going to have a 20%.
Right.
Well, they say you can be asymptomatic for 2 weeks.
Well,
so you don't really know if you're sick or not, or if you've
But
been
that's
infected.
according to whom?
That's according to just whoever, the CDC or
The
whoever
Center
they
for
say.
Deception and Corruption?
Yeah.
See, look, listen. I can put a theory out there.
They ought to be disbanded. They are
CDC?
such frauds. Yeah, they just got caught this week fudging all their numbers on the coronavirus.
Right.
They had somebody who was killed in a motorcycle crash that was attributed to COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
What, did he cough and go off the road or something? You know, they're doing this thing to deliberately fudge the numbers
I mean,
to keep this panic
Listen,
up.
you can come up with all kinds of preposterous
Oh,
things.
yeah,
Yeah,
finding
I could start a rumor that you know, if you're out at night in a full moon, that the moonlight, you know, does something genetically to
Makes you really
your
hairy,
system,
grows
you
your
know.
teeth.
Yeah, it turns you into a werewolf, right? The full moon does. So I mean, you can start these crazy, stupid things, and if enough people buy into it and share it around, it becomes
Normalized.
an urban legend where the werewolves are. But at any rate,
You've been married to one for 40 plus years.
so you know, you don't really know what is true unless you're reading it out of God's word or you experience it yourself. And I think too many people are taking
Well, and even
the
putting
news
too
for
much,
gospel.
too much reliance on what your experiences are can also be negative. Because I mean,
Yes,
the
they can.
deception at the end of time is going to be all about experience. You know, how are you
Deceiving
gonna-
the senses.
How are you going to argue with the guy
Deceiving the
looking
senses.
at Jesus?
You know, deceiving the
I
senses.
watched an interview this week with a man who was a former leader or in charge of propaganda in the Soviet Union. He's an old fellow.
Right.
And he said that their experience was that when they started indoctrinating, especially indoctrinating the kids in the college level, he said, when we get done with them with our propaganda, he said, even if you tell them truth and you give them evidence and you give them facts, they will not believe it.
Because it wasn't what their
Because they-
educators told them.
It's
Because
already
they've been
it's ingrained.
indoctrinated and ingrained so much that they won't
Because they know the
quickly
truth.
look. They won't look. They think they already know,
Right.
and therefore they
They-
won't look.
Yeah, they convince themselves
Yeah.
that they do. I mean, that's what people do. People take information in and they kick it around in their head and they come to a conclusion. And some people take more information. Some people take little bits of information and they come to these conclusions. And to them, it becomes the truth. So, and that's the problem that you deal
The
with.
scary thing is we've got a society that takes the word of whatever's on the television screen as truth.
Or whatever they get on Facebook. You know.
If it's on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah, so anyway, we know that we do have a source of truth, and that's God's Word, and we're going to open that to 2 Kings, what chapter?
14.
Chapter
Mhm.
14. 2 Kings chapter 14 is where we are, and that's we've got several chapters, 25 chapters in 2 Kings. So more than
You say
halfway
we're coming
through.
into a dry spell on this.
Or the-
further
Well, I mean,
down.
there's still some cool stuff in between, but it's just kind of redundant. Like it's
When you
more.
get into the begats, it's like that kind of a chronology thing.
Not exactly. I mean, there's still little bits of history here and there, and I suppose it's important for understanding the ups and downs that every nation faced in terms of their rulers leading them into positive and negative and positive and negative. You know, and
So
God constantly trying to win them back to positive.
So we're in the second year of Joash, son of Jehoahaz.
King of Israel.
Right.
So it says there, in Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, he was 20 and 5 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 20 and 9 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jehoadan, or Jehoadan of Jerusalem. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like David his father. He did according to all things as Joash his father did. Howbeit the high places were not taken away, as yet the people did sacrifice and burn incense on the high places. And it came to pass, as soon as the kingdom was confirmed in his hand, that he slew his servants which had slain the king his father. But the children of the murderers he slew not, according unto that which is written in the book of the law of Moses, wherein the Lord commanded, saying, the father shall not be put to death for the children, nor the children be put to death for the fathers, but every man shall be put to death for his own sin. He slew of Edom in the valley of Salt 10,000, and took Selah by war, and called the name of it Joktheel unto this day.
It
Then
must have been a powerful meaning to change a great name like Selah too.
yeah, Selah means like a pause, doesn't it? Like a
Selah,
It's like a rest.
a rest.
Yeah. and Joktheel I think means the rock or something like that. I don't know.
I'm
Just got it
looking it
written
up.
down. But
The blessedness of God.
that's what Joktheel means.
Yeah.
Joktheel.
It was also called Selah and Petra.
Oh,
So
Petra.
there's that. That must be the place where
Jordan.
they had that carved all that out.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a city in the low country of Judah,
Jordan.
and it says the name given to the cliff, which was
Interesting.
also the stronghold of Edom by King Amaziah after capturing it.
That was
So
probably
that's Petra, where they had that whole city carved into the cliff.
Right.
Hmm.
You ever seen the pictures? It's fascinating.
Yeah. So that was his fortress, or was that? Oh, I don't know. But
It does say just call the name Joktheel, but
Hmm.
which means the blessedness of God.
it's pretty cool. Verse 8 there. Then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, king of Israel, saying, Come, let us look one another in the face. And Jehoash, the king of Israel, sent to Amaziah, king of Judah, saying, The thistle that was in Lebanon sent to the cedar that was in Lebanon, saying, Give thy daughter to my son to wife. And there passed by a wild beast that was in Lebanon, and trode down the thistle. Thou hast indeed smitten Edom, and thine heart hath lifted thee up. Glory of this, and tarry at home. For why shouldest thou meddle to thy hurt, that thou shouldest fall, even thou and Judah with thee? But Amaziah would not hear. Therefore Jehoash king of Israel went up. He and Amaziah king of Judah looked one another in the face at Bethshemesh, which belongeth to Judah. And Judah was put to the worse before Israel, and they fled every man to their tents.
I wonder why that nation was always divided. I mean, you always had
Israel and
Israel and then you had Judah.
What
There
caused the division?
Yeah, there wasn't this cohesive. I mean, the tribes when they took it over, they were each given a portion of land. Of course, I guess they're. Yeah, it just seems odd that you would have. It's like our country, like if during the Civil War, if we had split up and we had the North and the South, and we had a president of the North and a president of the South, you know, but they still called it the United States, you know.
you mean like why they never came back together? Or
Well, I
just
don't, why wouldn't they just have one ruler over the people, and why weren't they unified together? So, I mean, even here, it just seems like there's always this division between that's traced through time here. You know, because it tells you, you know, this guy reigned when this guy, you know, when this guy was in his 12th year or something like that. You know, it just seems.
Let's see, Dennis Hofer is online on Facebook, and he said, wasn't the second rock that Moses struck a Selah rock? Good question. We'll have to look into that.
You mean the second rock at Kadesh Barnea there?
The rock that Moses struck.
Because
Let's see.
that's where the rebellion occurred between Korah, Dathan, and Abiram.
Well, I don't see the word Selah used before 2 Kings 14. So we'll have to look into that separately.
Let's see. Let me have a quick look here.
Anyway, so Israel is
Yeah, the
almost
rock.
been divided.
Here, it's not the word Selah, rock. It's the word Selah that is translated as rock,
Oh, okay.
but it's without the H. It says Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, or before Selah, and he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock?
Well, that makes sense though if you consider that this cliff that is now called Petra. Well, Petra means rock too.
Mm.
So
okay.
if its old name was rock in the Hebrew,
And they just
they
stuck
just
with it.
brought it over to that and named it Petra, because it's this massive red. I think it's a reddish looking
Yeah.
cliff,
Yeah.
and they carved all of this whole city into the side of this cliff that is, has buildings you can.
Kind of walk in and out.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
Vaults and
Massive
things like
cliff
that.
though.
Yeah, and I think there was someone saying that there at one point may have been some sort of like system for getting water up to it, because it's pretty high up there. They were saying it wouldn't have made sense, but that there seems to have been some
Well,
kind
Petra's
of water thing.
around it would be down near the southern end of the Dead Sea now, over in Jordanian side. So that's a low, very low. Even though there's cliff faces there, it's a low.
Relative
It's
to
actually
other parts.
below sea level portion of it, I think. I mean, the Dead Sea is something like 400 meters below. It's like 1,000 or 1,200 feet below sea level.
Hmm.
So you're way, way down. That's why things really grow well around the Dead Sea, because the oxygen level is more dense there. So
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Interesting correlation there.
Yeah, Dennis said the first one was a Sur, Tsur, the first stone, but the second one was called a Selah.
Might be something interesting to look at there.
now, is he talking about the rock that Moses struck twice?
He has Numbers 20:10. What do you put up here?
Mm-hmm. That's the one I just read for you.
Yeah. No, it's back there.
I like these rabbit trails. Well, I wonder why it was called rock that way the first time and not the second time. Since Moses wrote this, you would think that.
To find it, I searched the words rock Moses. That's what I found.
Rock Moses.
Yeah, so the first rock is the one in Horeb, which is just like a rock cliff. The word Sir.
But that word must mean something different than Selah.
Shall smite.
This is the rock that he was supposed to speak to, and he ended up striking it. And that prevented him from entrance into the promised land because he disobeyed. And it was almost like he was in that act. He was taking. He was going to provide the water instead of God providing the water. So. But I've been to that place where he struck the rock, and it's absolutely incredible to see the amount of water that came out of there and the erosion that was created by that particular circumstance. And that's also the same area where Korah Dathan and Abiram, where the ground opened up and swallowed them. Same place. So.
An interesting place to do some digging.
Ron ran a frequency generator over that area, and he said that, of course, they
More
had,
readings for gold and everything, right?
yeah, he said there were gold. There's about 40, 50 feet down. There was gold. Well, maybe it wasn't quite that far down. 10 or 12 feet down was gold.
Let's see. Mary Ruth said, as I've been reading about the various kings of Judah and Israel, I've been amazed at the violence in the politics of the day. It reminds me of today. The politics of the day.
Nothing's
reminds me of
changed.
today.
Nothing has
Even
really
though
changed.
those in power may not be outright killing, although that does happen with the Clinton family, the destruction and lies told so they can wrest power through the hook or by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
Hooker by crook.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Solomon says, nothing new under the sun. I mean, the political wrangling has been going on
And I think the only reason that
Since
system has changed
time.
is because you don't have the system where someone can go kill the president and become president. It has to be done through election. since there's all these processes, I would say that's probably the only reason you don't have politicians still killing each other.
We're getting a lot of people joining on Facebook.
Very fun.
Yeah,
But that is
right, because we're
Yeah.
civilized now, Elijah. We don't have to resort to violence.
We'd rather resort to
We-
deception
We,
and
we can
underhand
just
tactics.
assassinate your character. We can blackmail you. We can do all kinds of things to make you to accomplish the end result.
It's just less messy now. Well, actually, still, it's
Some-
actually more messy now.
Sometimes, not if you take into consideration some of the things that Clintons were involved in. It's definitely not less messy, but
Or that they rope in a lot of people's families and stuff.
yeah. But they want to look like saints, but they want to.
Scott says
Okay.
Petra is 2,657 feet above sea level.
Oh wow.
From the monastery there, you have a nice view of the Dead Sea.
Hmm.
Yay, Scott!
Yeah, I thought
Nice.
around I thought on the southern end would be below, but
The southern end is higher
yeah.
than the northern end.
Well, you've still got the Dead Sea is like a cave in the middle, essentially. Everything else is around it at a higher
Yeah,
elevation.
and maybe
anyway.
Scott can check and see what the elevation is of the Dead Sea. I think it's somewhere 300 or 400 meters below sea level, like 1,200 feet below sea level, something like that.
The lowest point, right?
Yeah, lowest point on Earth.
I was thinking as Dennis was talking about the two rocks, and that Moses had to strike the one but speak to the second, which he didn't do.
Two separate occasions.
Right. So I'm saying in striking the first rock to produce water, that was very soon after they came out of captivity.
That was the Rock of Horeb.
Right. They'd been
Right.
slaves, but then by the time they got to
Near Kadesh.
Kadesh there,
Yeah.
he was instructed to speak to the rock,
Speak to the rock.
because their hearts should have been softened by all of the things he had done for them,
Right.
to the point that he didn't have to strike the rock; he only had to speak to it.
Yeah, I think if I had been Moses, I'd be banging my head against it.
It was just talking about hearts of stone and that
Because
kind of thing.
That's
those
interesting.
people were so.
I was
so
afraid if I
stubborn.
didn't say it, I would lose it, because stuff goes through my brain so quickly sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool point.
Yeah.
And the idea of water coming out of both of those rocks.
And if you know anything about Horeb, where that rock is up high in the mountain. It's not down in the bottom of the valley where a spring might come out of it. It's up high. Water doesn't come
Right,
up out of the
right.
top of the mountains.
And we're not talking about
Yeah.
A spring.
the rock just sweating and
Trickling.
little trickling water coming out. Sometimes
Talking about water for a nation.
we're talking about millions of gallons of water.
Enough that it eroded the
Spring.
stones down below.
Right,
It
yeah.
wore a pathway.
Yeah, we're not talking
So
about
that's it's like opening up a river coming out of there.
I've seen those. It's amazing too, because when you look online and you find the pictures and the videos that people.
Illustrations?
No, they went and took pictures and videos and drone shots of all those locations.
Yeah.
And when you look at those, I mean, the evidence is so it's so obviously the site.
Scott's probably got some really good footage.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Scott's been out there,
yeah.
hasn't he?
He says the Dead Sea is 1,410.8 feet below sea level.
Okay, so I thought.
So yeah, Petra's pretty high up.
So that's
compared
over
to that.
400 meters or close.
Hmm.
Yeah, probably over 400 meters. So.
That's really cool. So I guess we can jump back to this thought if we're done with that one.
Yeah.
Verse 13 there. And Joash, king of Israel, took Amaziah, king of Judah, and the son of Jehoash, the son of Ahaziah, at Bethshemesh, and came to Jerusalem, and brake down the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim unto the corner gate, 400 cubits. It seems unnecessary, but it's a lot of wall to break down. And he took all the gold and silver and all the vessels that were found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house, and hostages, and returned to Samaria.
Well, that's why he broke down probably more wall than you would think necessary. He's probably still looking for treasures,
Carrying out all the wealth, I guess, or just.
or still looking for places that might be secured.
Now the rest of the acts of Jehoash, which he did in his might, and how he fought with Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehoash slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. And Jeroboam his son, different Jeroboam, reigned in his stead. But Amaziah the son of Joash, king of Judah, lived after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, 15 years. And the rest of the acts of Amaziah, Are they not written in the books of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah?
Yeah, well, you would have thought that, okay, these two guys are kind of ruling. You would have thought that they would have been corresponding with one another, and then you would have thought that one would have suggested, hey man, why don't we just kind of join together? You know,
We don't need all this
we'll
bloodshed.
be
We're
stronger,
brothers.
and there'll be less contention between, you know, the tribes and stuff.
Well, I thought it was interesting too that both of them were supposedly leading God's people.
Right.
They're both claiming to be Israelites and worshiping the true God, and yet he didn't think anything of going into the temple and taking all of the temple vessels and things,
spoiling the nation.
taking those things. It's one thing to go in and take the things from the king's treasury. You know, people did that in war all the time, but to go into God's house and steal God's things, that's a pretty
Blatant.
bold
Very blatant.
move.
Mm. Yeah.
And Dennis made the comment that a British Middle East historian has now proven with GPS that Petra is actually Muhammad's Mecca, based on
Oh,
the
really?
direction that several early mosque walls faced at intersecting at Petra.
Wow. So Mecca is actually Petra.
Yeah, yes.
Mecca Petra.
We'll have to talk about that one another time too. That looks like it would be an interesting study.
Yeah. Where Islam established. Yeah. Which, I mean, there's so much dispute. All that dispute over there in the Middle East for all that land, and
All the land in that area, and they all fight over this one little section.
I mean, we look at what they were doing in this time of the kings, but they're still doing that today.
And I can understand it if it was still like the Garden of Eden. You could understand why somebody
be
would
worth
want
fighting
the
over.
choice property. You'd really want that, but it's wilderness, man. It's rocks, it's cliffs, it's desert. It's
Scott says the rock in Horeb was struck to
The
represent
principle of
Christ,
everything.
who was afflicted before his crucifixion.
Yeah.
The rock at Kadesh represented Christ after he rose from the dead, and whom we can talk to and bring, and whom will bring us to the promised land. That's why Moses was not to strike it there.
Wow.
We got to remember they're about a minute and a half behind us in what they're seeing, and what we're saying.
Right.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. That's cool.
We've got about 8 more people on the Facebook feed too.
Nice.
He's great.
So verse
2 Kings 14 again.
Yeah, we're still there. We're in
Took the gold and silver and all the vessels.
We're in
outside
19.
The house of the Lord. We're down lower than that.
19.
Yeah.
19s were 18s were ended.
yes, yeah. Verse 19. Now they made a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent after him to Lachish and slew him there. And they brought him on horses, and he was buried at Jerusalem with his fathers in the city of David. And all the people of Judah took Azariah, which was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. He built Elath and restored it to Judah after the king slept with his fathers.
So there's
Oh,
some-
after that the king slept with his father. So I guess it was, it's a short-lived situation there. In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, began to reign in Samaria, and reigned 41 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin.
I wonder if this is why we ended up during the time of Christ with Sadducees and Pharisees.
That was like the offshoot of this system that was...
Well, again,
Divided?
they contended often. I mean, that it seemed like this division that was always there. I mean, I know there was differences between the two. These were supposed to be the religious leaders of Israel, but obviously they were coming from two different perspectives on certain issues. And I wonder if that stemmed from this division. If that's why the division was always there between them.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, basically a spiritual divide, not just like a...
Well, it's like we have conservatives and liberals today. There's obviously a different perspective on things, the direction the country should go, who we should be friends with, who we should be, would be concerned about. Obviously, everybody that chooses to become informed could end up with a different perspective. It's like people go to the Grand Canyon, and two people standing there at the Grand Canyon looking at the same physical evidence, and one says, wow, look what evolution did, you know, over millions and millions of
Little river
years.
down there cut through there.
And the
over
other guy
millions of
said,
years.
wow, look what the flood did in 15 minutes, you know, in a day or two. So you got people looking at the same thing, considering the same evidence, the same circumstance, and coming up with two entirely different perspectives. I mean that's an absurd example because they're so polar opposite, creation versus evolution, as a polar opposite there. But I mean, you got people today, you know, that supposedly they'll say, you know, we love children and we love life, but yet you got somebody say, well, we believe in abortion.
Well,
and
my body,
somebody else-
my choice.
Yeah, I believe in abortion, and them says no, that's killing children. So,
That's what I say about the masks.
you know,
My body, my choice. I choose not to.
yeah, so.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Well, they
that's
say that affects other people. It doesn't affect just you.
exactly.
Yeah, that's what
They
they say.
want you
yeah.
to believe. If they say it's for the greater good, just know you've got a politician in front of you who's telling you lies.
Yeah.
It usually
well,
means it's for the greater good of his wallet.
I mean, all of
His
us.
greater good.
I mean, there were lots of things like when Obama was president. There were things that he was taking the country in a certain direction that we all disagreed with, but we didn't go out and start
Rioting.
tearing
or-
things down and, you know, protesting and whatnot. We just knew that, well, once he runs his term, we can try to get somebody else in there that'll take the
It's just
country.
because the unruly kids got who they wanted in their power. And now that
Well-
the unruly kids don't have anything, they start making a fuss and start throwing a fit.
Well, I think, there was only really one reason why Obama got into power, and that was because of racism. He was chosen
Yeah.
and put in there because of his skin color. That's how he got in there.
But it was because of
he-
emotion, not because of reason.
Right, but it was emotion. So he was what was he, like he was in the Senate for a years or 2 years or whatever. I mean, he had no track record. He just kind of came out of nowhere. He was held up as a black president, even though he wasn't fully black. White mother, black father, but he was put into, and you know this because of some of the interviews that I saw. People would go and interview somebody that was black, and they would use all the talking points of the Republican Party. And that person would say, oh, yeah, that's just exactly what we need. That's exactly where we want to go. That's why I'm voting for him. And this was all the Republican talking points, right? And yet, so it showed that this guy, at least,
They had no idea what he believed.
he had no idea what he really stood for, what he believed, and he was voting for him because he was supposedly the first black president. But there weren't. I mean, there were people that, you know, news commentators and whatnot, that were always talking about his issues and policies and whatnot, and how inconsistent they were or whatever. And of course, you know, I'm just saying it's.
Maybe
It's
some
crazy.
of the lesson of these chapters has more to do with talking to us who have to live in a time of ungodly leadership. I mean, there were obviously people within the Israelite communities who were following God truly.
Well, I think that's definitely part of it here.
Must have been very disorienting to live in this time when you have all these different rulers.
Yeah, the average family probably didn't even know any of this was going on. I mean, possibly. I mean,
At the time.
you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have TV, you didn't have any of these media
It's
things.
it's very, very possible that it could have been very hush hush and just whatever, and just leaders did this or that, or
Yeah.
Well, the fact that it was all chronicled and recorded,
by at least prophets and stuff, and
yeah. I mean, not to say that everybody was like educated or something back
Well,
then.
most
but
people wouldn't have access to this unless you. And I don't know if the rabbis would get up and actually go through some of this during a service or whatever. But
probably became part of the teaching as they developed it.
I think this was information for the rabbis. This wasn't necessarily information for the average person.
But you think about what it's like when we live in a country that has, from its inception, espoused the Bible and God and Christian principles. And now we come into a time where we have leaders that have been elected who are making decisions, and Supreme Court that's making decisions
Not-
that are totally
yeah.
out of harmony with Scripture.
Right.
Well,
So
yeah, I
we
mean,
have-
as soon as Obama became president, we had the full support of like the gay rights movement come into effect.
And the first thing Bill
It
Clinton
goes-
did was sign the partial birth
It
abortion
goes way
bill
back.
when he was
Yeah.
elected.
It goes way back. We moved away from scripture over 100 years
Yes,
ago.
I mean, if these lineages continued, it would just be naming presidents and saying so and so did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and
And this president was good, but this one did the evil inside of the
Right.
did that which
So-
was right, but walked not in the statutes of the Lord.
So if there was a modern chronology, that's exactly what it would do.
But at the same time, apparently there were those who didn't give up their faith and didn't stop practicing their faith.
Well, what you find, I think, through Scripture is that God always has a thread of truth running through it.
Well, yeah,
I mean, even when he ended up with just Noah back in the beginning, he ends up with just Noah getting on the boat, him and his family. That's how the thread of truth continued. Just it came down to that place. That's why God will step in at the end, because it will get even more severe, so that no one would be left. And yet God said He's going to spare, 144,000 will be redeemed that had never tasted death. So that's why He has to step in.
Well, I think one of the threads that's woven through this as well, just on the idea of a small remnant, is that the prophets are constantly, streaming in and out of all this story.
Mm.
And many of them are true to the Lord and get killed for their faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's true.
what's even more interesting too is that there's lots of weird stories. Like I was reading just this morning about Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and about the situation of the prophet that visited him. And the Lord told him, "Don't turn aside, don't eat or drink in this place, go back a different way." And then he gets met by another prophet from the other nation or whatever, who's apparently also a prophet of the Lord, who says, "Come and eat with me. An angel told me to bring you back home." And he goes with him and eats with him, and then and the Lord gives him a prophetic word and says that because you have eaten and drank in this place, that you will not make it out of this place alive. And just the craziness of that situation. And the point that it draws out to me is the serious nature of the job the prophets were given, to the point where God is illustrating, I don't know, like to me what it says is that you need to know the truth for yourself, and you cannot rely on someone else for the truth. Because that prophet could have lived if he just said, "No, God told me this," and he would have told me otherwise, if this was going to be okay. Regardless of this other prophet coming to him saying, "Oh, an angel told me this."
Daniel wasn't spared the trauma of being thrown into the lion's den.
He was just spared to death.
His life was spared, but
Yeah, it doesn't mean it wasn't freaky.
doesn't mean it wasn't terrifying in its own way.
Or, they were thrown into the furnace, the 3 Hebrews. It's not like that God saves you just because of whatever. I just find it interesting. Like, there's so many different things about it that seem to stand out that is perplexing. But the cool thing throughout all this is that the prophets are coming in and out, and that and the other thing that's interesting, I guess it's because it's the book about the kings, it's not about the prophets, is that they're only just mentioned. Like, basically their name is given, and then you never learn anything else about them. It's like, oh, and the prophet so-and-so came and told him this, and then you never hear about prophet so-and-so again.
Susan said Noah was a conspiracy theorist until it began to rain.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna rain. It's never rained, Noah.
That's true.
Well, he would have to be considered a prophet himself, because
He was
it had
predicting an
never,
event
it
to
had never
come.
rained.
So
Well, I
conspiracy
think-
theorists and prophets.
I think that the prophets coming in and out of these narratives is an indication that even though there was evil happening, God was still trying to circumvent it, still trying to send a message, trying to bring His people back. He didn't give up on them and wipe them out. He sent prophets to warn them.
Yeah, well, when you know the end from the beginning, that gives you quite an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
You know who's going to come along, you know who's going to be receptive to truth, who you
Definitely the one you want to trust.
can move in a certain direction.
Yeah. And continuing in verse 25 there. He restored the coast of Israel from the entering of Hamath unto the sea of the plain, according to the word of the Lord God of Israel, which he spake by the hand of his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai the prophet, which was of Gathifer. Gathifer. That's a weird thing to say.
You gotta wonder how these names were originally
Gathifer?
pronounced. And we've anglicized these names, but they couldn't possibly have been pronounced as badly as we use them.
Well, yeah. Some
Probably
of them,
they're in
some of them
Hebrew.
are almost totally different. Like the names Jeroboam and Rehoboam are pronounced differently in Hebrew, obviously, but like they're literally like different almost altogether to the
Like
point
instead of
where
Elijah, you'd have Eliah.
yeah, Eliyahu or yeah.
Simeon seems to stay the same.
I've seen it a couple different ways, but it's usually Shemaiah.
Shemaiah.
SH, not
Shemaiah.
SI.
Shmaya.
Shemaiah.
I'm gonna call you Shmaya from now on.
Shemaiah.
But yeah, I mean, so the names are all different, and obviously they just have meanings, like Land of the Rock or whatever. Like,
So here's the verse 26. Here's God basically saying he sees the affliction of Israel, and you got to remember too. You have this. I was telling somebody the other day. There are three things that we have to contend with as human beings. We have a supernatural enemy that's going to be out there trying to miraculously try to harm us. We have nature itself, since the flood, that is kind of turned against us. And then we have the human nature, where you have those three things are always working against God's people in some capacity or another.
yeah,
And so
and that God is
trying to work, His Spirit is trying to work through all that mess.
And apparently there were prophets at every given point in time. I mean, this was a prophet that we never really heard anything about, but
But I mean,
so
hereafter-
prophets were much more in existence.
Yeah, I just think especially at this point, since Elisha had passed, it seemed that the prophets were doing their job.
And he says here that the affliction was very bitter, right? There was not any shut up, nor any left, nor any helper for Israel. So I mean, this is a desperate situation for the continuation of God's people.
Well, I mean, and when you look at that's another reason I want to kind of look at all the different lineages and look at the ups and downs and how long this person reigned and that person reigned, how many were good, how many were bad, because I'm kind of interested in seeing like how the pattern of their ways went through everything, leading them to like points like this where they were desperate
And I guess too that as somebody who would be a leader in leadership, they're trying to figure out, do I just call the prophet and ask the prophet what to do? Do I just base my decisions on my military training? What can I get the people to go along with and cooperate with? Most of them. I mean, you got all the. I mean, that's where we are in society today. You got leaders that come in, and the people that get into leadership, they say, what can I tell the people to get them to vote for me? What can I tell them I'm going to do to get them to vote for me? And I mean, if I can get the majority, if I can tell the people, yeah, man, we'll take the Supreme Court back and we'll keep abortion legal and all that. And if I think the majority of people are in favor of that, then that's what I'll base my platform on, and I should expect to get elected, right? So it seems like politicians today, at the heart of every politician is, how do I get elected? What do I have to say? What do I have to do to get elected? Doesn't even matter if you believe it yourself personally. What do I have to do to get into power?
Well, in Israel, they didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you just killed the guy.
Right.
You just go ahead and stab him or suffocate him with a pillow, and.
But you
what
also
do
had
want?
you also had to be part of a bloodline to become a king.
Doesn't seem like it. I mean.
But we also do that kind of thing in terms of character. If somebody's running against us, we'll try to distort their character or destroy their character, so that people say, "Oh, I'm afraid of that person. I can't vote for that person." So we also do that some today. Not like you said, it's less messy, but we do the same thing today.
Yeah, and I mean for the bloodline question, did they were all of the ones that ended up taking over from other families like cousins or somehow related? 'Cause, I mean, like thinking of that, it seems like there were other
Coups.
families. Yeah,
Well, the Lord
who
said the
were
scepter
like,
wouldn't leave the house of David.
that was specifically for Judah, and that's the whole reason he preserved them.
Right.
So they're supposed to be a continuous lineage, one way or another, some preservation of the seed of David. But I don't know, because I feel like there were some situations where other, like, it was basically like captains or soldiers would, stage a military op and then kill the king and then take over, and they
Well-
didn't seem like they were family.
That's true.
As good or bad as these guys were, God says He basically preserved Israel through Jeroboam and Joash.
Yeah, that speaks a lot to who God is, that He can, through all of this mess, still keep His promise.
Yeah.
That, despite all the wickedness and the craziness that's going on and the terrible things that they do, and I mean, all of this rests on the earlier promise that He mentioned. I was, in First Kings, when He was talking about Jeroboam the son of Nebat, where he told him that, I'm going to preserve seed for the line of David because my ultimate ruler is going to come through his line.
Right.
So I mean, it's all about that promise.
Sure.
It's about that 5,000-mile view, where you're looking down the road and you know what the end result is supposed to be. So you're willing to put up with this here because you know that ultimately that's going to play out down
Well, it's
there.
all about getting to the Messiah. It's all
Right.
about the
Well,
mission. It's
yeah.
all about I mean, God's always had the plan of salvation in the forefront of His perspective, and so it's all about that.
And I think that also speaks to the fact to why all of this wickedness is happening, is I think the devil is just specifically targeting them, knowing these promises,
Absolutely.
and he's trying his best,
Yeah, and he's
to
using.
make sure that the line is corrupted or falls apart or gets killed.
He does as much as he can. He turns people against each other, and he uses natural disasters or the nature itself to cause roadblocks.
Yeah. So verse 26 there, and the Lord said not that He would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, but He saved them by the hand of Jeroboam the son of Joash. Now the rest of the acts of Jeroboam and all that he did, and his might, and how he warred, and how he recovered Damascus and Hamath, which belongeth to Judah, for Israel, are they not written in the books of the chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jeroboam slept with his fathers, even the kings of Israel, and Zechariah his son reigned in his stead. So yeah.
Yeah, so we get basically an idea who follows who, and along the way, whether or not they were part of God's plan to restore and preserve, or were complicit in the devil's intent to really get rid of them. Because, like you said, the devil knows that the promise was made that the Messiah is coming through this line.
Yeah.
So if he can eliminate the line,
And he eliminates the Messiah.
right,
That's what he thought, and it didn't work.
right, that's what he thought.
Well, that and also, like I said, the way the Lord could preserve that line. Of course,
Oh,
He
yeah.
knows the end from the beginning, so
Sure.
it's no thing for Him to know what's going to happen and how it all needs to line up and play out.
Well, it's just like today. I mean, and as Daniel said, God sets him up and takes him down. I mean, that's part of what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
God always has His ways of accomplishing the end result. All things do work together for good from His perspective. Whether there's a lot of
Wow. Mess in between.
mess in between, it's still going to come out. Listen, the Messiah came just when He was supposed to come, came right through just where God said He would come, because He knows the end from the beginning. He knows what we're dealing with today. He knows how things are going to play out. He knows who's going to be involved, but He also knows what the end result's going to be.
Yeah.
And so that means when things go crazy and we do have
You can
this
still
kind of
trust.
new world order,
You
you
can
have
still-
to keep trusting.
You can still trust. The video that I shared with you earlier was, they ended up with, we still have this hope.
Right.
There's still, the Bible presents to the world, presents hope to the world, If you didn't have this, if you didn't have what was written here, then
What's the point?
you might be in despair. But this provides hope because this gives you the end result. This
It
gives
tells you how it all plays
how it
out.
all plays out. Not in exact detail. There's no way to
It's not a
record
play-by-play.
everything. Right, it's not play by play, but you know how the game ends. You know,
We know the score.
and we know the score.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of you choosing to
The
be.
almanac.
It's a matter of you choosing to be on the winning team or not. You know.
Scott
So-
said Jehu killed Ahab and all his descendants so that the bloodline was cut off from ruling the northern kingdom of Israel.
From Ahab's.
From
Ahab's bloodline,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, and there was an even earlier instance too, I believe, with Jeroboam. His son, his eldest son, fell sick and died, but the second son who ruled was killed by another guy named Baasha. So I mean, it seems like those family lines were constantly interrupted by, with the exception of David's. His is the only one where you actually do read a consistent family
Yeah.
genealogy.
I mean, just think if you knew as a parent when you were younger, if you knew what children were going to be born to you, what they were going to do, who their kids would be, what they would do, and it just keeps going on and on. You know, all of this information you had,
Might choose not to
and,
have any.
and
I go, nah.
But see, again, God, you would think that God would have thought that when He created Lucifer, right? Knowing the end from the beginning, knowing that he would go rogue, He still didn't do that. But I mean, look at all of the heartache that was unleashed and the woe that was unleashed on this special creation of His, and yet He still went ahead with it, even knowing all that would happen, because He knew what the end result would be. A greater security of His kingdom, of His universe.
Yeah, that the whole universe would get to see how much He loves them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see, when Matthew first presented truth to me, Andrea Tracy says this, I was slightly worried, but I found great comfort knowing how it ends. And just like you guys said, it just depends on which side you want to be on.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only showing the great love too, but also showing that that without Him doesn't really work either. You know, basically also affirming and proving that like without God there isn't really anything that works as well too.
From the very beginning, God's plan has always been a perfect plan.
Yeah.
Lucifer came along and right there at the throne, basically was disillusioned and said, "Got to be something better than this." I mean, how can you even come to that conclusion?
When you have everything.
That there's something better than heaven. I mean, the very air that you're breathing is pure,
the very
holy,
presence in which you guard.
That's
Yeah.
why it's a mystery of iniquity.
Yeah, that's why it's called the mystery of iniquity, because how can you
Want more.
How can you-
than
yeah, how could you
already
even-
everything?
think or imagine that there would be anything better? Because you've got God right there, and you've got heaven and your kingdom and holiness and righteousness.
But I think that's
So-
why it's not going to get to happen a second time, because those of us that go through those experiences and make it to the kingdom will know what it's been like, what happened, and what it led to. We won't ever let that,
Yeah, when you step
that
away
spirit
from
happen again.
Right, exactly. You step away from the perfect scenario that's already there.
Because we've seen
The
how
horrible.
much He invested in us, how much He loved us, how much He was willing to give to redeem us and save us from
Only a few people know that, though.
Yeah.
But to say, I mean, I think we'll see that more concretely when we meet Him. And, I suspect we'll all at some point have personal time to actually get to
Talk with Him.
talk with Him. I mean, you're there for eternity, so you got time. But the just the I think what is it? Does Ellen White talk about us kind of being like missionaries to other worlds to kind of talk about
ambassadors.
Ambassadors.
the experiences and just
Yeah,
be
the
like, it
ambassadors.
wasn't worth it, man.
Well,
Like,
the other worlds,
rebellion didn't
the other
go well.
worlds are in total harmony, right? But for us to have experienced
Something unique.
that great love,
Well, they could have been given a gift greater than they themselves were
Or to have
given.
experienced the consequences of sin and then the redemption that the Lord offers. For those that have never sinned, they've never known the kind of
Which is still
disturbance
fantastic.
that we've had here.
Yeah. For the Son of God to have a willingness to give up part of what makes him God for eternity, that's so off the chart we can't even really grasp that. And yet other worlds, I don't know if they can grasp that either as we're going through the process.
Well, they won't have any
Yeah.
reference other than that. Us.
Well,
once we
they're
get there.
watching. Otherwise, says this is the lesson book. The earth is the lesson book.
Yeah.
And so they are going to learn something from our experience. And so that there will be a benefit to all of his creation because of what we're going through. The important thing for all of us is that God has made salvation available to each one, and it's a matter of our choice.
For all those who are worried about aliens from other planets coming here and invading us, we're the only aliens in the whole universe.
We're the only aliens.
And we're trying to
We're
invade
the
them.
ones that,
Yeah.
we're the ones that have sinned
there
and
would be
caused
no-
all this destruction.
No need for anybody to want to come here. I mean, why come to a
Someone said
desolated
would they fly by our planet and lock their doors
Yeah. Oh
like
boy,
we
that's
do in those bad
yeah.
neighborhoods?
That's right. Exactly.
Just an interesting side.
We are
note.
the trailer park community.
Yeah.
We have the trailer park of the universe.
Yeah.
Big dirt hole.
Not to criticize anybody that lives in a trailer park
No.
by any means, but
The
Stereotype.
stereotype.
yeah, just a stereotype because
The ghetto.
and yeah, I mean God came to save the people specifically, that were downtrodden, and that's all of us. That's all of us. We're all
We
we're all on this trailer park. Believe me, that we call the earth. But y'all get the idea.
And boy, what a crazy world it is.
That explains people like Jerry Springer.
Okay.
Make the most out of a bad situation.
So close us out, Mr. E.
No shall.
Oh, good conversation today.
Yeah. Father, we thank you so much for the Sabbath, and we thank you for this time of study that you've allowed us to do, and ask that you help us to learn more things as we continue to study them out in coming Sabbaths and throughout the week, that you would grant us the insights to know and to share with others, and to take into ourselves that we might be better people and better servants of you. And we ask that you would help us to be more like your Son, to be more loving, to be more compassionate, and to show the love that you have for us as humanity in everything that we can do and say, and that we would be able to speak life and love into everything that we do. And we ask for your protection throughout the week, and that you would continue to work with us as we all work towards our own salvation and understanding you and learning how we might best serve and please you. And we thank you for everything that you've done and for all who tuned in online as well. Ask for a blessing for them, that you would do the same and accomplish your work through all of us. This we ask and pray in the name of your Son. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I want to thank you once again for joining us. We love having you guys here, and we love chatting with you online there with your comments and so forth. Please continue to do that. And even when you go through scripture like 2 Kings or Chronicles and the begats and all this kind of thing, it seems kind of sometimes dry, but what we hope to do in our studies here is to make it relevant for us today.
To extract the insight.
Yeah, so we're looking at the principles, we're looking at what's applicable for us today, and how it can prepare us to move on in the future.
Because there has to be a reason for it.
Of course, yeah. The history, Bible history is very significant. As people have forgotten it, and that's where we get into trouble, when we forget where we had gone in the past. So hopefully you'll continue to tune in with us and share your thoughts and ideas as well, and we appreciate that. And we'll see you next time back here at homechurch.us. You guys have a great week. Take care. God bless.
We had a good crew today. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people joining us on Facebook today. Oh. That would be disappointing.
No, this is
only be disappointing if you put it on your applesauce.
Yes. All right, let's see. I need to stop the stream, stop recording, which is stopped.
just because it's my nickname. That's why I want my ashes to be like in that. 'Cause it's like, oh, it's Cinnamon. There he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Son of obedience.
Yep, there you go.
Now in the fresh new can.
Cinnamon.
Zesty.
Katie joined us today, Angel and JY.
Oh, they saw us.
Yeah, they joined us on Facebook.
Wow. How about that?
So that was nice.
Tell them they ought to just come down.
Why didn't Jay
sometime.
just come down?